Welcome to Emotion Chips, where we talk about the real reason everything happens for a reason. I am your host, along with...
What? You're completely butchering this. First of all, you didn't say your name.
Oh, yeah.
And you didn't go up high enough. I'm your host. A little more pep, a little more energy. Come on, buddy.
I am your host.
No. All right, go on. It's your podcast.
I am your host, Charlie Carroll, along with my cryptic co-host, Mallory Redmond.
Why? Why do you say that?
Well, it's true.
I've been told...
You can be a little cryptic.
I have been told that before.
Well, look at this. Charlie got something right.
But I'm curious what... I mean, you did not get that entire intro right, but...
Well, it's okay. This is episode 30. Nice even number.
Yeah.
This is, if we looked up what 30 means, I'm sure it's something related to what's already happening, because everything happens for a reason. We don't always know it, but it does. How are you today, Mal?
You're off to a strong start.
I really am off to a strong start. Thank you for recognizing that.
How are you? How are you feeling?
I'm doing great. Just had a good meeting prior to this, and I'm good.
That's great.
Yes.
I'm happy.
I'm glad you're happy. How about the news? Jerry Falwell Jr.
Oh, yes.
Yikes.
Yeah, what a mess.
I'll tell you what, I forgot, and maybe I'm just now of age to where I can remember these things, how crazy election years are.
Yeah, it's not a thing that I've forgotten. I think I was just very unaware.
Yeah.
Previously. But
and of course, this is more divisive.
Divisive.
Can I say divisive?
I mean, you can. I don't know that that's the word that you're trying.
Maybe it's my cantankerous co-host, Mallory Redmond. But yeah, this is obviously, there is a lot of varying opinions and differences between the candidates and their followers, and lots of crazy stuff going on. But
did you watch the Republican?
I did not.
Oh,
I know I told you last week on the podcast that I like to tune in, but last night we had a meeting at my house with about 15 people,
right.
And so I did not get a chance to tune in to the Republican convention. I will try this evening.
I think there's 3 more nights.
Yes, I will get 1 or 2 of them in for
right.
sure to see what's going on. But the news yesterday was Jerry Falwell Jr., which he took over for his father, Jerry Sr., at Liberty University, which my brother attended.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, he's a
all
Liberty
4 years,
grad.
Okay.
All 4 years, yes.
Nice.
Largest Christian university in the world. And the news breaks yesterday, I believe, that he and his wife were involved in an extramarital affair, which is just very interesting. And I'm not accusing Jerry Falwell Jr. of this, because there's still probably a lot that will come out. But from his statement, his own statement, Jerry Falwell Jr.'s statement to the Washington Examiner, he said that his wife was having an affair with the pool boy, and the pool boy was trying to extort money from them. Now, with my investigative skills from coming from and running an investigative firm,
Mm-hmm.
there are certain things that you look for to see who is telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And when he wrote that in the Washington Examiner, that this pool boy that they met, who was 20 years old, was trying to extort money from them, you look for the response from the pool boy. And the pool boy said, no, I wasn't trying to extort money from them. I was just trying to negotiate a business deal where I could get more of a percentage of equity, which, from an investigator's standpoint, that tells you he acknowledged some truth to that,
Mm-hmm.
that he was trying to get more money, which means he probably was trying to extort them, because with their profile, and they're powerful people.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Over 100,000 students, I believe. And, the Falwells have been looked to as, a very important spiritual family, and at least from a Christian standpoint, over the last, 75 years in this country. And so they have a lot to lose. And it would not be hard to imagine that this pool boy, once he found out what he had, wanted to get something from it. And so Jerry Falwell Jr. came out and said, hey, he was trying to extort money because he was having an affair with my wife, and who knows where all of the truth lies in this. But Jerry Falwell Jr. was quick to come out and say that his wife was having the affair and the inappropriate relationship. However, there are pictures online of Jerry Falwell putting himself in compromising positions. As far as, there's a picture of him with his pants unzipped and his belly hanging out with, I don't know who it is. It's a young woman. And then he makes a joke, and it's a post that he made, which is
very interesting.
Crazy.
Yeah.
As a public figure.
Right.
Where he says, I swear that is black water in my drink. Almost pointing to the fact that, and it's saying, we had a lot of great visitors on our yacht this past weekend. And it's just like, dude.
What is black water?
Well, I think.
He's drinking like a rum and Coke or
yeah,
something?
I think he's drinking like a rum and Coke and trying to be funny and sarcastic that he has or feels the freedom to consume alcohol while leading this large Christian university. I don't know.
I'm guessing Liberty has some pretty strict rules against alcohol. I don't know specifically, but I mean,
I don't either. I know that used to be a thing. I don't know if it still is or not, but it's just fascinating. That the headline in Reuters last night was, I had sex with Jerry Falwell Jr.'s wife while he watched.
This is from the pool boy?
Yeah, this is from the pool boy. And so it's interesting to try to work through all of the narrative to see what's going on, which ultimately at the end of the day, that stuff doesn't matter. But junk and tragedy and loss sells, which is really unfortunate because, 95% of our news feed, whether it's social media or television or print, is really selling the downside and the unfortunate things associated with a lot of humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think when, especially figures in the Christian world, when things like this happen, it can be, nobody's perfect, right? It's particularly difficult when you're in the spotlight.
Sure.
But I think when things like this happen, especially to people who are like faith-based leaders, they have such an opportunity to respond in a way that is, redemptive and shows other people what redemption can look like and what owning your failures can look like. And so I'm curious to see how it plays out. So far, it's not been playing out super well in terms of just how he can model screwing up.
Yeah. One of the things that I find fascinating is the role of responsibility, authority, and responsibility, and how numbing and blinding it can be, especially from an energetic standpoint, right? That we as human beings are all energy. And what a lot of people from the past, going back even thousands of years ago, have done is examined the body to see where energy is stored. And so when you talk about chakras, what you're really talking about are the different intersections where energy in the body is stored and what different emotions or varying emotions tend to lodge in that area of the body. And so when you look at starting from the bottom up, which is the most important or the strongest energy, you have the root that is at the base of the lower back that deals with responsibility issues, like weighty issues. It is your root. It is your core. It is who you are. And that comes down to like making a living, balancing relationships, leading people, accomplishing objectives, like root core issues. And then almost on the exact other side, but just a little higher below your belly button is your sacral, and it manages sexuality. And we are sexual beings. Christianity in particular has not done a good job of helping people, in Charlie's opinion, in helping people understand, like, first and foremost, you are a sexual being, and some of your strongest feelings and desires are going to come around sexuality. And, you can see in the life and teachings of Jesus, he had to work hard to downplay sexual failure. And I think he did that and did not draw attention. He did that by not drawing attention to it, to help people actually get to what was going on behind that manifestation of sexual dysfunction versus picking on something that is actually good that we're supposed to enjoy and have function in a healthy way in the right relationship and context. And so when you look at your root on the backside with your lower back that handles responsibility, and then you look at your sacral, which handles everything having to do with sexuality and intimacy, right? Like, your whole identity is connected to your sexuality. Before you were Mallory, you were, whether it was an ultrasound or not, you were a girl, right? And so your sexuality is there in your sacral, and then it goes up from there to your, below your heart and above your belly button, which it deals with your willpower, a lot of your willpower. And so when people start having root issues, what happens is the energy center that is closest to your root comes over to try to give it some of its energy to balance it out. We call it adaptation, to adapt to it, to help it out. But the energy that comes, the peptides and the energy that comes over with it carry a lot of their DNA, a lot of their, I shouldn't say DNA, characteristics is what I'm wanting to say. Okay. And so the reason why you see so many leaders fail is because when their root and the core of their business or their parishioners or whatever it is starts to get in trouble, and their root starts to feel compromised and need more energy, probably because they're not resting and taking care of themselves, the energy from their sacral comes over and starts helping, and all of that energy has a sexual orientation to it. So their root is in trouble, identity energy comes over to it, and they find themselves making these decisions that are sexually oriented. Why? Because your sexuality has a lot to do with creating something new. Like, a great sex life should be the manifestation of people's ongoing commitment and journey to their relationship, right? The reason why so many people are struggling to stay in a monogamous relationship anymore is because we have lost sight of or lost track of the fact that we're supposed to be evolving and becoming new all the time. If you got married when you were 25 to whomever you got married to, that's not who you are supposed to be married to today. You are supposed to be married to someone that you helped evolve and become a new person. And so you should get the chance to make love to a new person, an evolving person. And so I joke, somebody said to me the other day, "Oh, I see that you shaved off your mustache." And I made a joke and just said that I like to help my wife feel like she's making love to a new person every once in a while, which maybe wasn't so funny.
I mean, I'm the only person here, so I could fake laugh.
Yeah, don't do that.
You could do the laugh
I could
track.
pipe it in. I do have a laugh track, but I won't do it. But there's some truth to that, right? We're always supposed to be evolving. And so when someone and that's not happening. Let me finish that statement by saying we have gotten so conditioned to focus on just us and advancing our bank account or our bottom line that we forget that we have to practice self-care and evolve ourselves, and then help those that are closest to us pursue their dreams and their sense of purpose and let that help them come alive and evolve, so you can continue to develop this relationship where both people are being made new, right? That's what the book of Revelation says, that behold, God is making all things new all the time. And sometimes you got to go down in the valley and suffer and experience hard things in order to become new. And it's where a lot of people fail and give up, on this podcast, talking about the real reason everything happens for a reason. There is too negative of a context or thought process around failure and difficulty. Failure and difficulty is exactly what you need to become new, right? To question all of the things that you believe that were formulated or based off of, maybe 10 years ago. I said recently, I don't think on the podcast, but in another speaking environment, that people tend to be wearing the blue jeans that they wore when they were in their prime, right? Because they just associate that with a good time of life. Well, we have a lot of mindsets when it comes to our relationships that haven't changed because we liked the season that mindset was developed in. But the truth of the matter, and this is why faith is so important, we're called to live by faith and to move closer and closer toward that promised land. And so I say all of that to say that when you have someone in a position of authority or responsibility that fails to take care of themselves and go at the proper pace, these sexual escapades are opportunities to get out of their current world and to be someone different with someone different type of thing. And, I don't know if it's true that the headline is here. I have it pulled up from Reuters, where this pool boy from Miami is saying that he watched, I'll read it for you. Falwell watched me have sex with his wife. I don't know that that's true. Let's be really clear about this. But that would not surprise me. That would not surprise me. And if we're just being super honest, which we do on this podcast,
Always,
I would bet you a large majority of men, while making love to their wife, have envisioned other men making love to their wife while they are doing it to turn themselves on.
Interesting.
Would not surprise me at all. Because that's the way it works. If you don't do the work and put the time in to invest in helping your wife become new while you are becoming new, you have to use, hacks or shortcuts to try to turn yourself on and keep it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone out there want to text this number, 937-303-4788, to tell me if you're one of those people or not?
Let's take a poll.
Let's take a poll.
I think what's so, just for me, what's personally, I don't know, enraging is too strong of a word, I think, but that's the only one that's coming to me, is I hear what you're saying, and it makes perfect sense. Like the weight of responsibility and how that, they're almost becoming like victims, right? To the weight of responsibility when they start kind of messing around sexually. But they don't change what they're saying from their platform, right? About sex, about homosexuality. Yeah. Like it's for a lot of these people, it can easily sound very shame-based. Like sex is a shameful thing unless you're in this perfect environment that you're doing it in. And that has been from what I've seen and read and heard, pretty harmful for a lot of people. Sure. And so all these many faith-based leaders are not shifting their message while they're living the life that they're living.
Yeah. Well, and they don't shift their message because that is their means for providing for their family. Sure. And one of the things that I felt like God said to me 15 years ago is what you do to build it, build an organization, is what you will have to do to keep it. And often when it comes to public figures, there is something that worked for them. There's a formula or a routine that worked for them, and they're afraid to disrupt the apple cart and change because they're afraid that they won't be able to provide for themselves. And so, one of the things that is great about being a volunteer, if you can be a volunteer, is you get rid of the unintentional manipulation that comes with getting a paycheck for doing what you do, right? And so we say it a lot in Christian circles. I don't know that we believe it, but it's not our wins or our losses, right? It's not our wins or failures that define us or that should define us. And so we should be able to talk about it. But I don't think people feel safe because, whether we acknowledge it or not, we tend to live in a culture that defines people by what they don't mess up or what they don't do wrong, right? And again, it's not a popular message, but if we really took the glasses off and read our Bibles the way we should, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of ironic because you read all of these stories about prostitutes and murderers and hypocrites that are invited in as they are and given an opportunity to progressively work toward change versus being perfect. And somehow, I think the explanation is when it became a political thing, when religion became tied to the state around 300 AD with Constantine, that it became more about what you're not doing versus what you are doing. And it has just paralyzed so many of us because you can't be a human being. I think about these situations and, being in leadership, a lot of leaders don't talk about their struggles because they're afraid that they'll be rejected or left because they're a human, right? When, again, getting into the idea of the real reason everything happens for a reason, very few, if any, people ever set out to say, I want to disappoint my family and disappoint the people that love me by doing something that I thought I would never do. That is such a caveman, the thought that people do these things on purpose is such a caveman, archaic, backward, lazy thought. Where we look at a leader and point our finger and think, I knew they were a hypocrite.
Right.
I mean, talk about a thought that comes from someone who has sat on their hands on the bench their whole life. That's what that is. And it's lazy. It's extreme laziness. And God knew it would come. And that's why he chose people like Rahab, or that was a prostitute, or Martha, that was a prostitute, or Paul, that was a murderer of innocent people, by the way, or Moses, that was a murderer, or David, that murdered someone just to cover up his imperfect track record. And literally God sent his son through the lineage of a lot of these people and had people like Paul write 2/3 of the New Testament. What's the point? The point is that without God, without this eternal energy of light, life, and love leading us, all things are possible, and we need to quit worshiping our failures by not talking about them or pushing them behind the scenes or vilifying the people that do end up caving under the pressure.
I think what makes it so easy, though, to vilify those people, and I'm not condoning vilification, but
Sure.
is like we were saying, their message doesn't change when
Sure.
their lifestyle does not reflect their message.
No,
and so
sure.
do they believe their message and they just can't live into it? Or because of what you're talking about with what's happening is the weight of responsibility, or do they not even believe it?
Well, here's another unfortunate reality of leading, is that pressure tends to numb us. And it's very easy, if you're not taking intentional time off, it's very easy to become blind or numb to reality. Because you run and jump into the fire to help people, and, darkness and evil are patient adversaries. And the wait until you are so overwhelmed physically and tired after decades of service that you have lost your edge and cannot see the trees from the forest. That's a very natural thing. Whether you're leading an automobile company, whether you're leading a church, whether you're leading a family, like it is very difficult to maintain an accurate and clear image of what's in front of you. I mean, this is very difficult for mothers staying at home, right? Because you get so overwhelmed by the needs of your children that are this, evolving, but a lot of the same day by day, that like you lose your identity. It is such a real temptation for mothers to lose their identity and have it wrapped up in the life and the health of their children or their marriage or their home, that women can very easily stop being who they are. I was recently at a wedding, and Amy and I were talking about if we ever get time to reinvent the wedding business, that we'll do it, because it needs to be reinvented. It's like the church. It's something that has been the same way for 100 years. And one of the things that I harp on is brides getting so sucked up in the industry of wedding planning and wedding days that they turn the corner for their groom to see them and they don't look like themselves, because they've bought every product that you can buy out there to look as if they're going to be featured on some sort of wedding show or magazine.
Yeah.
And that is very easy to lose your identity when it comes to just living life and getting caught up in the narrative of what the culture around us is telling us we should be, how we should look, or how we should behave.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard when you have, the heart of a warrior, or you have this huge heart that wants to make a difference in people's lives. It is very hard not to get sucked in, to get overwhelmed to the extent that biologically your systems start failing. Like your emotions and your willpower, when you go up from, in the chakra standpoint, when you go up from the sacral, which is under your belly button, up to your heart, again, it addresses willpower. And that has a lot to do with, like, your willpower is a battery like your phone that starts off, hopefully, if you got good sleep, stronger in the morning. And as the day goes on, it wears out. That is true of different seasons too, that if you get some rest and take a vacation, you can charge up your willpower, but then it wears down and you need to take a break.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so, because what you're describing is you're so far deep in the forest that you can't see the trees, like really leaders especially need people around them who can say, like, okay, things are getting a little bit out of control. Like maybe you need to, because it's, to me, looking back at the timeline, it's pretty clear to me that Jerry Falwell Jr. was going down a pretty bad road, right? Like this is not earth shattering, this news that has just come out to me. I think a lot of people have kind of seen patterns of behavior that are questionable. But he doesn't want to take time out. He's going, the train is moving and he's on it. So I don't know. Leaders, I don't know if it's like a regular sabbatical that you're kind of locked into, or you just have people around you that can help you kind of discern when you need to step back a little bit. But it's hard, and it can be so destructive because they are leaders, and so people listen to them, and their words hold weight, and so when their actions do not follow their words, that's really harmful for people who have felt a level of conviction or discipline or something by the words that they speak. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Rick Warren, who has pastored a very large church for a couple of decades, talks about rest. And I don't know the exact phrase that he uses, which is very creative. Let's see if I can pull it up here about rest. I'll try to find it and put it in the show notes, but he talks about the importance of doing it daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly, and how he automatically puts those into his life, because if he doesn't schedule those times of rest, he's going to be in trouble. Right. And so it's a proactive thing that has to be there. And it's just hard. I mean, it's difficult because of the day and age in which we live, where, these are some of the things that have to be handed down to us. You can't afford to learn them in real time because often it's too late.
Right.
And it's, going from the sacral to the solar plex, which is under the heart, which is where your willpower exists. If that's you and you're worn out, you just need to get familiar with doing an assessment as to where your energy is at.
Yeah. I think that would be, maybe I just cut you off and
No,
you're
go
about
ahead.
to say more about that, because I think sometimes we get to a place, at least I do, where I'm so worn out's my normal.
Yeah.
You're just living in worn out and you don't realize how worn out you actually are until something really bad happens, or, until your face hits the floor.
And sometimes that's what it takes, right? It is going through that. But if you can develop a general understanding of what your basis is, then you can get an idea for where I am compared to that. And so you don't have to know where you are at any given time, but you can say, if you were, if you were in a forest, you could mark a tree and know where you are to that tree, though you overall don't know where you're at. And I think when it comes to our sense of rest and our emotions, it comes back to 1 through 10, where do I feel like I'm at energetically, like emotional energy? Where am I at?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really looking at your solar plex. And so when people get into trouble, root trouble, their root goes first, their sacral comes over, their sacral now gets taxed. It pulls from the solar plex, which is their willpower and their desire to live. It gets taxed. It goes up to the next one, and it's their heart. And their heart gets worn out, and then it's just a trickling effect all across the board. And next thing you know, you don't feel like living. And you're making decisions you would never make before.
Yeah.
It affects the whole person.
So how do you come back from that? When all of that is in motion, what do you do to sort of undo what you just described?
Well, I mean, there's several things you can do. I would say it starts with, if you're not taking one day to completely rest and counteract the messages that would say you have to accomplish something in order to feel good about yourself, that's a good place to start, right? That you could be in trouble, or you're already in trouble because the message of being productive has been too luring or powerful over you to where it's controlling your behavior. Start there. The second thing is, you've got to do things that invest in the life of your body, which is the life of your cells. And so your husband and I have been jogging together recently. And one of the things that we were talking about is just, when you go and push yourself on a jog, you're challenging a lot of the cells in the biggest pump in your body, which is your heart. And the more you use it, the stronger you become. Mm-hmm. And the stronger the heart becomes, the pump, the better it can circulate blood, which is life, to the rest of the cells throughout your body, to include your brain, which is so important. And so I would just say that you've got to get regular rest in. You've got to start investing in yourself, knowing that you only get one body. And then the other thing about it is, start paying attention to how you feel when you're around certain people. You can be around people that take your energy, but the moment you become surrounded by more people that take your energy versus give you energy, you're at a net negative loss. Yeah. Right? And so it's only a matter of time before you're going to be in that same situation. Right. And so find people that give you energy and slowly work toward having those people in your life. You can go outside of the circle to make a difference and invest energy in other people. And that's what we're supposed to do by being, the Good Samaritan, is sharing our energy with others. More than your words, people need your energy, right? And so if you're an intellect and you have a lot figured out, that's great. But words are just an attempt to communicate energy. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of empty words being spoken by empty people because they haven't stewarded their energy.
Right.
Right. And so you can get in a room if you've got the right energy and help people come alive. Right. Like I can, just sitting in each other's energy field right now, we're bouncing energy back and forth and giving and taking energy. And I think hopefully everybody has been in a position before where, and I say this to our employees in different businesses, I hope you come in and have to work really, really hard and just run your tail off throughout your whole shift. But I also hope that you've been around a great team to the extent that you leave with more energy than you came with.
Yeah.
And we've just been conditioned and grown up in a society that, is too narrow when it comes to looking at the dimension of what gives and takes energy from me. Work will never feel like work when you're doing what you're passionate about and you're in an environment with other passionate people. Why? Because their passion translates to the exchanging of life, and you swim in that and you get it and you continue to be passionate yourself. What's difficult, and we see it in this situation with Jerry Falwell Jr. in Liberty, look at how this story is affecting the energy of hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people that are all involved in some way, shape, or form here. And so, we've got an opportunity to share life organically, and a lot of that comes down to who we are and how we're taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, we don't know all that has transpired or all that this is about. We're just going off of what is being said. And I probably would not have said anything if he did not come out and write what he wrote to the Washington Examiner about his wife having this extramarital affair with the pool boy. Completely explainable, the situation.
Yeah, I think it's still a topic that begs a conversation based on what he posted on Instagram. That photo, which he has since deleted.
Yeah.
But that was disturbing.
Well, I think it just speaks to a level of health.
Yeah.
It's a judgment thing, right? So you go from the root, the sacral comes over to help, then that gets in trouble, the sacral, which manages your sexual energy, and then your willpower from your solar plex gets involved, then your heart gets involved, it gets tapped, and then it goes up to your throat, and you start saying things, your voice starts changing. I'm not saying necessarily your physical voice as much as how you represent yourself and articulate what's on the inside, and then that goes up to your third eye, which is like your insight and how you think. Clearly, he's been running on empty for a while because his judgment is affected, right? And so we're looking at it now in the manifestation of things, but this happened a long time ago.
Yeah,
started happening a long time ago.
Yeah. So, do you think leaders, especially those who are like faith-based leaders, Christian leaders, should they, there's some pastors who they're lifers,
Sure.
They are leading a church for decades.
Yeah.
That's got to be incredibly challenging. On many levels, but just the level of attack, I guess you would say, based on just the responsibility of leading. They're representing faith, right?
Right.
And what do you think? Do you think that that's possible? Do you think it's wise to be in a leadership role for your adult life?
Sure. I think good leadership, the first and primary responsibility is to find people and invest in them, and in a micro way, slowly start giving your leadership to them and helping them become leaders, propping them up to lead and make decisions for you. We're growing. I did hear a piece from Nikki Haley in what she said at the Republican convention last night. But one of the things that she said was that she did not believe that this was a racist country, being an immigrant from an immigrant family. But then I thought what she followed up with, and I don't think this is a racist country either. I do think that we live in a country, in a society where, again, like the news we talked about earlier in the podcast and the episode, the worst things will always get talked about first, and put to the forefront of our attention. And some of that is politically motivated to try to win votes and steer people. But that being said, one of the things that I did hear her say is that we are growing and evolving and becoming a better version of ourselves, and that her parents would not allow them to feel like victims, but would take what they were dealing with and continue. She called herself a brown person raised in a black and white world. And what I liked about what she said, just the brief snippet that I heard, was that we are evolving. And I bring that up because the truth of the matter is we're not that old as a country. And we did inherit a lot. We inherited thoughts and beliefs, literally inherited them. And it has been our responsibility to evolve and grow out of them. That is very true when it comes to leaders as well, and learning what a leader can and cannot do and what they should and should not take on. In the rise of industry, right, which this country had a lot to do with, it became normal, in the time of prairies and little villages, separated by hundreds of miles from the next village. It became normal to have a pastor or a sheriff, that they did that their whole life because there wasn't much movement out of that little community. It was the same. As we evolve and grow and the responsibilities are greater and there are, millions of more people in this country and on the planet, we have to evolve and change, especially when it comes to how we see growing people and leading people. And so all of that being said, my personal thought about it is that, a pastor has a window of 10 or so years where they can really get in and learn what everything is about. But at that 10-year mark or 10,000 hour mark, they really need to start bringing people in around them that they can give all they learned in that 10-year period of time in a 2-year period of time, and let them start to get ahead of where they were, and then give it over to them and exist in the shadows and serve in the shadows and go on with the next thing that you're supposed to do. So answering your question, I don't know how much sense it makes, if you're really about changing a community or changing a lot of people's lives, I don't know that it makes a ton of sense to sit in your position for multiple decades. Mm-hmm. I think it's all about empowerment and learning how to give your position away. Andy Stanley has a leadership podcast, and something that I heard him say 10 years ago that I really liked and agree with is just that, if you always seek to give your position away, there will always be a space for you. And so I think that's, I can see where a lot of pitfalls would be avoided in doing that.
Mm-hmm. I'm struggling with, I don't know. I guess I want to return briefly to the Nikki Haley thing.
Sure.
Because I know that there are people, I have specific faces in mind of people who are listening who have directly experienced the evils of racism. And I just want to, it doesn't feel right to just say that our country is not racist and not affirm people who have experienced racism and their experience.
Yeah. Nikki Haley's words are her words coming from, did you look that up, where she is from?
She was born, hold on, it's giving me her real name. She's in a Sikh family. She was born in South Carolina.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, we can look it up. Here would be the question, right? As an example, and these are all made up numbers. If you had 10 immigrants or people of a different nationality that were not white, and 8 of them said their experience is that they did not experience racism, and 2 of them said that they did, or flip it and say that it was 2 that said that they did not and 8 that said that they did. Getting into the semantics of all of it, at what point in time would you say it is or is not a racist country? We do know that in most cases, whether it's with drinking and driving or whether it's with sexuality or enforcing, yourself on someone else from a sexual standpoint, we do know that there are more people that do not do those shameful, degrading, selfish, evil, whatever the word is, acts than people that do. And so I guess it gets into, is it the moment that 6 out of 10 people have had that experience that we become a racist country? Is it, what is it that makes the country a racist country when we know that the large majority of people are not that way?
I don't know that we do know that. I mean, there are microaggressions happening all of the time. People that aren't even aware of inherent racism,
sure,
born in them. So
how many of your friends would you say are racist?
I think everybody, not everybody. I don't know a number. I don't even know how many friends I have. But I think there are many people. If you come to me and right away you say, I'm not a racist, that's a red flag to me. That shows me you probably have not done your work.
And just for clarification standpoint, not to be combative, because I think this is great to dig out, helpful to dig out. How would you define racist if someone is a racist? Give me, maybe this is more helpful, examples of where Mallory is a racist or has been a racist.
You see a black man on the street and hold your purse tighter to you, closer to you. I've experienced microaggressions.
Does that make you a racist?
I think that's a racist tendency, because if it's a white man and you don't do that.
Okay, so just again, getting down into the energy of all of this, how many times do you have to do that before you go from a racist tendency to being a racist?
I think it's the same thing. That's racism. If you're engaging in a particular action because of the color of somebody's skin. Sure.
So from an energetic standpoint and talking about, the chakras and somebody's solar plex, where when they get tired, all of us, I think you would agree, all of us are capable of misrepresenting ourselves when we've already had a bad day or we're tired or whatever it is. And so I would think that there are people like you out there that maybe reverted back to something that was in your DNA and had a bad day and exerted or operated in a way where there was a racist tendency that you did not catch in the moment, but you caught later. That still would not make you a racist. So the difference between a racist tendency or behavior and being a racist is not as clear cut as they are or they are not. Maybe in striving to be something different than what you experienced. I'm not saying you were raised in a racist environment, but if someone was raised in a racist environment and they hate it because of that, because they see the destruction of it, there is a situation where they would be overwhelmed by entirely other things or a lack of sleep and demonstrate an old behavior that they're growing out of and them not be a racist. And I would just say that though all of us, because this is humanity, will go towards the superficial things first, right? like the difference in our language or the difference in our education level or then the difference of the color of our skin and make that the beef versus I'm just uncomfortable with someone that is different than me. And I'm going to make a superficial judgment based on me being right and them being wrong or whatever the judgment is based on this really easy difference between us.
Which is racist.
Sure. Yeah. But that doesn't change. That doesn't make. So getting back to my question with you as to how many of your friends are racists versus have they demonstrated a behavior that they were ignorant to or growing out of, what would you say is you're just going to say everybody is racist and therefore we have a race. This is a racist country.
Well, you said it yourself that this is a young country. And so I think all of us are still, our entire time on this earth, we are working out the racism that has been that is inherent in us. That we should be, not everybody is doing this clearly. We should be continually learning what privilege that I have, what privilege that you have, the ways that I behave around you, the ways that I think about you because your skin is a certain color and you were raised in a certain environment. Because we are such a young country, we are of the generation that is working out racism that we've been born with.
So is every country a racist country?
I'm sure there's racism in other countries. Yeah, of course.
No, but answer that question. Is every country a racist country?
What is a racist country?
Well, I asked you first what racism is.
Yeah, I responded to that.
Okay, so you know what racism is. And then I asked you on the scale, how many people do you have to have in order to make it a racist country? And I think the conclusion that you were advocating for is that pretty much everyone is a racist, right?
I think we all have. No, I mean I said everyone, and then I said not everybody. I think.
But I'm trying to figure out how do we figure out what's the equation?
I guess
how do we figure it out?
Why does it matter? Because what I'm saying is there are people who are experiencing racism in this country, and they matter to me. And so if it takes me saying we live in a racist country for them to be affirmed and believed and seen, then I'm going to say, yeah, we live in a racist country.
Okay. And what I'm coming back to try to clarify is based on your definition of racist, which is the exertion of a racist tendency at some point in time in your life. Would it be fair to say that every country is racist?
Sure.
Okay.
We live in an imperfect world.
I agree 100%. I think we do too.
I'm not sure what you're trying to get at. It seems like you're trying to get
I'm not trying
in something.
No, I'm not trying to catch you in anything. I'm just going back to the clarification of her words where, an immigrant that has rose to a position of power and she seems to have stewarded it well. I haven't followed her career that much.
Well, I'd like to hear her not be in a political environment where she's trying to get a candidate elected.
Yeah, I mean, I know that she has served our country as a governor. I know that she's been through hard times with her husband, and I know that it appears that she seems, as a woman, to be doing a good job serving as the ambassador to the United Nations. And I'm just going off of her words, what she said, that she felt like being a brown girl raised in a black and white world, that this is not a racist country. That's her opinion. It's absolute truth to her. And so you just came back and brought us back to her words, which we can only say what her words are and how she feels. And
that's why I brought it back up, is because I know people who that is not their truth, and I want to honor them and just speak to the fact that that can be her truth, but that is not the truth of many people that I know and many people that I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the heart of this is trying to get to qualifying statements about, her opinion as a minority and as a woman that has been in an elected position is that the country is not a racist country. Your opinion is that the country is a racist country. And I think ultimately that I would agree that it doesn't matter where you're being raised or what the color of your skin is. you are going to have a tendency to have racist tendencies and make judgment calls on people before you know them based on the color of their skin, their education level, where they were raised, etc. I think that is true of the United States. I think that is true of anywhere that human beings exist. I think what we were trying to qualify is, or establish, is that there is no defined equation that says, here's when you know it's a racist country and here's when it's not. And ladies and gentlemen, listening to this, here's why you just endured all of that, is because that is a blurred line that allows us to make these blanket statements that can't actually be measured, which turns out to make it just a distraction from being people that say, maybe it is, maybe it's not. I'm going to do what I can do today to go and right the wrong and not be that, and actually show people that are different than me that I'm committed to them in light of our differences.
Yeah, I guess I don't know why. So you're saying there should be a blurred line or there should not be a blurred line?
I don't even think that's the right question. I think that line exists, that it's very easy to say this is, or this is. Like, let's not even dive into the temptation to answer the question. I think it is. I think it's not. There's no way to measure that. You know what I'm saying? If we had 51% of the population that did have a racist tendency or exhibited a racist tendency, which you and I agree, the more in touch and familiar you are with yourself, you will catch yourself wanting to make a snap judgment based on the differences between you and another person. I think that is in every single country in the world. And so essentially you could say, well, that's a racist country. But I think what we're trying to do with countries, you know, in this specific instance between Nikki Haley saying she doesn't think it is and you saying you think it is, we're trying to personify a whole country and make them a person to say they're good or they're bad. Maybe they will change, maybe they won't. When, if we are going to personify a whole country or a whole nation, we have to acknowledge that it comes back to all of our individual behaviors and decisions as people that make the country the country. Or else it's always going to go back to this person thinks it is this person doesn't. And there's no way to change that. There's nowhere to go from that. It's completely unproductive. That's my point in all of it. But I don't think there's a human being on the planet that is not tempted on a regular basis to make a snap judgment, typically that exists in fear or uncertainty being a big one, as to how it's the way the brain works. We talk about this on emotion ships all the time. Our brains work full-time and overtime all the time to get rid of uncertainty. And so when someone is walking down the street that is a different color than us, the way the brain works as a security assessment, like a risk assessment, is it will say, and it will undermine us to say, because they are this color or because they're wearing this, I could be hurt, right? And I think evil utilizes that all of the time to get us. Evil knows the way that our brains work, and our brain's job is to keep us alive. And so I think the reason why we're told to live by faith and elevate our beliefs over our feelings is because our brain typically will prefer keeping us safe, and therefore running risk assessments that even would work off of a 1% possibility that this could happen. And
I think the risk assessment many times is it's living into a racist narrative.
Yeah, I mean,
because why would your risk assessment tell you that person's black, so they're going to hurt you?
Well, that message has been advocated.
Right, it's a racist narrative.
Not only does it exist in pockets, some heavier than others, but it also it happens on a micro level because of our biology. Then it happens in reality in larger areas than others, right? It's not all equal. There are places where racism exists and grows and flourishes. And then I think we exploit that at times for headlines and for selling news and for manipulating people to vote for us. And so I think there are plenty of realities here that at the end of the day, we can entertain them, we can talk about them, we can write books about them, and some of it will help and some of it will only make the problem that more complex. What I believe in and am a proponent of is go make a difference today. For everyone that is passionate about racism and the fact that everyone's voice deserves to be heard, make sure that's more than a talking point with your thumbs on social media, and go live it, go demonstrate it today. And I'm not against people talking about it. I am against people that just talk about it and that's all they do is talk about it. But go live it. Go live it. Episode 30, everyone. Here at Emotion Chips, the podcast where we talk about the real reason everything happens for a reason. And we get to be friends when we turn this off.
Forever.
Friends forever. See you next time.